All right. Hi, race fans. I am here with Rob Howden, you are a motorsports journalist for 25 years, correct?
Indeed, yeah, I've been
Okay,
doing it for a long time.
that's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You're a Road to Indy insider, and you're also the series announcer for Indy Lights, correct?
Yeah,
Or
so I do a lot of stuff. I own the biggest kart racing website in the world, at least in North America, called ekartingnews.com. So I start with
yeah.
that. I'm also the play-by-play announcer. I'm the voice of the Road to Indy, so I do all that on IndyCar Radio as well. But this year, also the series development director for the Road to Indy. So involved with bringing new teams, new drivers into the series, a liaison between the staff, the series, and all the teams and drivers as well. So a little bit more on my plate for 2021.
I was going to say that's a lot on your plate.
A little bit.
Well, and especially, let's see, we went from 2020 with no Indy Lights, right? The whole series wasn't
Yeah.
there. So now, yes, so now you have everything on your plate for 2021. So awesome. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So how? First of all, tell me a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up working with the series? Where did your passion come from?
Well, for me, it's been a lifelong thing. My dad was a stock car racer when I was younger, so I spent essentially every Saturday night at a local track up here in Ontario, Canada, called Flamborough Speedway. I fell in love with it there, and it was just one of the things that was in my life. Now, I wasn't in it when I went to college. I went to university for English and really kind of got away from it, but then got back at it afterwards. Ended up becoming a journalist for a racing newspaper in Canada called Performance Racing News. Really got into the go-kart racing world. Got hired by a magazine in the US called National Kart News. And then from there, I published my own magazine. I started with my own shifter kart racing magazine. Then I had a Formula Car magazine as well, and a magazine for dirt karting. So I had three magazines at one time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
That's
busy.
a lot.
But through that time, I started announcing races as well because I had the magazines. So when I had the Formula Car magazine, I started announcing a bunch of F2000 races. I announced the Atlantic Championship for a while as well, one season there. And then eventually, when the Road to Indy became official, when the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship came back in 2010 to really start this run of the Road to Indy, the Andersons hired me to announce then, and I've just been with them for the last 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really cool. So, because I can see your passion, and when I was talking to you on Facebook, you were so excited to promote the series. So I saw the passion in your eyes. So that's awesome. I love it. That's so cool. Okay, let's tell me a little bit about the Road to Indy program. How long has this program been around?
Well, the F2000 kind of car, 2-liter racing's been
Mhm.
around for 30 years probably, but the actual Road to Indy itself started. There was kind of a Road to Indy with Indy Lights and IndyCar, but then what really happened was Dan Anderson and Michelle Kish decided they were going to start this new series for USF 2000 cars, and that started in 2010. We had Sage Karam, Zach Veach; those were the drivers at the very start of that program. We ran USF 2000 for a number of years, and then what was called the Star Mazda Championship, they were going to shut that down. Dan stepped in and essentially bought that championship, renamed it Pro Mazda, and that became the next step in 2013. So that now is, of course, Indy Pro 2000. So you had USF 2000, you have Indy Pro, and then the very next year in 2014, IndyCar was looking for someone to essentially run Indy Lights. And here's this Road to Indy kind of lined up already. So Dan Anderson stepped up and they took over essentially managing it for IndyCar. And so 2014, all of a sudden there's these three rungs of the Road to Indy. Bring the brand new Dallara IL15 in 2015, new car for USF 2017, new car for Indy Pro in 2018, all brand new cars and a full essentially road all the way to Indy. Very similar for those who don't think about the Road to Indy. It's like baseball, single A, double A, triple A baseball. This is where drivers develop on the way up to IndyCar.
You said baseball, and I just over my head.
What? I get it.
No, because I'm obviously with motorsports, yes, but that's cool. No, it's a good analogy. I'm sure people understand.
For non-racing fans, I use that all the time because they understand it then, right?
No, so true, so true. Okay, so speaking, okay, what's so incredible? The series. Well, if we're just even going to go off the Indy Lights for a second, from 2014, that's not. Oh, I mean, it hasn't been around for a long time. And I want to talk about real quick. What's impressive about the Road to Indy series are some stats I found, and I just want to talk about these stats real quick before I go into talking about some other things, because I think it's worth mentioning how incredible the Road to Indy program is and how successful it is.
Indeed.
So, right. So we have 30 champions have been crowned on the Road to Indy, right? Okay. I thought this was cool. 31 Indy Lights champions out of 34 have been crowned in the series history, have moved up into IndyCar. 26 Road to Indy drivers were on the IndyCar starting grid in 2019.
Yeah.
These numbers are amazing. They're so impressive. And you know, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about racing in America and the opportunities. But you know, these stats are incredible, and obviously something is working, right? What is it about the Road to Indy? What are you guys like? What are they getting right? Because clearly they're doing something right when you look at these stats.
Yeah, I think when you go look at Indy Lights, of course, you know, the Road to Indy group, Anderson Promotions picked up Indy Lights in 2014. That series, Indy Lights has been going for since like 1990, right? Literally 30 years, as you had mentioned. You go back into the older, you know, the other decade where you're looking at Tony Kanaan and Elio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, those drivers coming in through there, right? Then more earlier, 2010, Joseph Newgarden, Connor Daly, and then on through. What the Road to Indy does, I think the beauty of it probably is there's a couple things. Number one, when drivers come into USF 2000, we're at all the IndyCar events, right? So they have a chance to not only meet all the people in the paddock, but it's more getting used to the development of it. Like obviously our cars get faster and better as you go up the ranks, but they run St. Petersburg and they run Toronto and they run, you know, the drivers that come in from other series, they've never been on a street circuit before. So we really train them in so many different ways, not only just behind the wheel, media wise, social media, we do a lot of stuff with them to get them, you know, really, we're priming them for IndyCar. So as they get up through the ranks, they've had so much track time. So when a driver gets from USF 2000, let's use a Spencer Pigot or a Pato Award or Oliver Askew, whatever it may be, they've had a chance to run St. Petersburg 4, 5, 6 times before they get there. So I believe that we really train them to know the circuits, to know the people. And by the time we're ready to graduate them from Indy Lights, they're such poised young drivers that they can make that step pretty easily.
No, absolutely. I think you said it so perfectly, so well. And you know, I had the opportunity. You know, you've heard Oliver Askew say the Road to Indy program works, and I actually was able to talk to Dalton Talent like this past season,
Yep.
and I asked him about Indy Lights, and I said specifically asked him because you know the rookies in IndyCar had a very short. Well, I mean, they
Not an
had
easy
like a
year.
hard season.
No,
No,
no.
for COVID, right? Not an easy year. But yet when you look at the ones, well, minus Alex Pillow because he's an exception. But when you look at the rookies, and I asked Dalton about it, and I said, Dalton, do you like did the Indy Lights? Did that help prepare you? And he did. He did say that he felt so prepared because of Indy Lights that you know that the COVID obviously COVID is affected, but you know COVID affected it in some way, but he felt really strong about the Indy Lights training, and I think that's amazing. And the system, like Oliver Askew said, the system works, so it's really great
Well, the key,
to have
listen,
that.
the key there is this, is that this past year, 2020, there's never been a tougher year for a rookie driver to come into the program because we had so little practice. We didn't have all the practice. We didn't have the preseason testing we normally would, right? And we normally would
Right.
go into a session. They would get a full, you know, that full session before, a couple of practice sessions, then qualifying. We were literally saying, go out there, qualify, and we're going racing. So for Oliver and Dalton and any of the young drivers coming in, it was so difficult for them this past year. If it had it not been for the time to being on in Indy Lights for both Oliver and Dalton, they may have had even a bigger struggle. And even Alex Pillow, it took him a little bit of
Right.
time to get comfortable in the car too.
No, definitely, definitely. So speaking of success stories, we've, you know, there have been so many big names, you named them, you know, coming out of the Road to Indy program into Indy Lights. You know, I'm gonna throw Scott Dixon out there because he was one of them for sure. You know, Remus VK won Rookie of the Year. Um, what's what's it like for you to see, you know, young drivers in you know the Road to Indy program go into IndyCar and have successful careers?
Well, the funny thing is it's when you look at the way at least the way I approach it, because I've been in karting first. I watched the kids come out of
Mhm.
karting into USF 2000. Really moving into Indy Lights to IndyCar, it's just another graduation step. And I think that's what we talk about, because one thing we didn't mention, and I'll bring this in, then I'll answer your question. One of the biggest things for the Road to Indy, obviously, is the scholarship program, right? There's not another series that has it in the world where the champion wins a scholarship to take them to the next level. And that's for a guy like Spencer Pickett, he would never have gotten to IndyCar if he hadn't got the scholarships. The funding just wasn't there. So every time he won a scholarship, it continued his opportunity to potentially make it there. But to watch the drivers come from Indy Lights to IndyCar and when we watch them do it so seamlessly, that's what I think for a lot of us on the road to Indy is so satisfying, because we watch the kid come into USF 2000, wide-eyed and so full of confidence. Then they get beaten down a bit when they're like, "Oh, I'm not winning races right now." But then we watch them grow from March of one year to March of the next year.
Mhm.
And then their first year, we always say 2 years every level, but you watch them grow and develop as young men and women as they work their way up the ranks. By the time they get to IndyCar, it's kind of weird. It's kind of surreal for us. They're not in our paddock now. They're with the big guys. But to watch them, like Colton Herta, of course, came out of the box so great his first year, was able to win at Coda. We almost see it. We can see the what's underneath there, the jewel that just needs to be shined a little bit by the IndyCar team. So it's not a huge surprise when they do well for us, but we feel really good about it, obviously.
No, that's awesome. I love that. So I have to ask you too. Do you have any cool or fun stories with some of some of the IndyCar drivers who are in IndyCar now, but when, did the Road to Indy program? Do you have any fun or cool stories?
Well, I don't know if I have any really cool stories. I'm not really sure if there's really anything that I don't think I've ever put that somewhere. So I have to remember this story. I don't know. For us, I think it's just watching these kids come up through the ranks.
Mhm.
I just think that because they're so quirky at one point, you know what I mean? And then what I
No,
do
they
find
are.
interesting, it's not really funny, but what I find super interesting is when they get to IndyCar, you kind of see what their intrinsic personality is about. There's some drivers, and it depends on where they end up going, right? A driver like Joseph Newgarden is really is so focused. So with Penske, he's so perfect, right? Because that's who he is. He's so focused. And then you get a guy like James Hinchcliffe, who came up through the Star Mazda Championship, ran in Atlantic, did a couple of Indy Lights races, and then we see him. He's as jovial as he always has been, right? That personality blooms when he gets there. And then some drivers just so focused, so relaxed. I laugh at seeing how their personalities develop once they're able to get to the top, and they can really, as I said, bloom kind of into who they are.
No, that's awesome. I will tell you something funny. One of my friends, my first interview, actually, like driver interview, was Renus VK when he was with Indy
Yeah.
Lights. So, and at Laguna Seca. And he remembers me, his family, remembers me, his family knows me. And so I was at this past season when we had testing at Coda for IndyCar. I was in the press conference room, and I was the only one he recognized in the media room. And he comes in, he's all excited, and he was so funny. He ran up to me and he was like, "Did you see my car? Did you see my car?" I was like, oh, please don't change your.
And he hasn't changed, right? That's the beauty of Renus, is exactly the same. Because the cool thing about Renus is the year that we essentially was 2016 when we rolled out the new USF 2000 car, the Tatis USF 17. We did it at Indianapolis during the road course weekend, the Indy 500 weekend. Well, Renus, this was 16, and he's not even going to race the car until next March. But he was there. He was going USF 2000. At that point, it was still Renus Van Kamphout. They hadn't changed. They hadn't really come up with the VK moniker yet. He had his full racing suit on when we did the launch because he wanted to be part of it. And the funny thing is, I think he was 16 years old at that point, but really has not lost that kind of boyish enthusiasm and boyish charm that he still has in IndyCar. And heck, that's why he's become such a fan favorite as well. We saw that pass at Mid-Ohio he did on the outside going into turn 4, and he's like, "Yahoo!" driving around, right? It's just, they're so excited to be able to drive race cars. And I think that's amazing.
They are. Yeah. No, it is. That's funny. That's so amazing. Well, that was my little fun story. I have to say. I know. It's great. These drivers are so funny. They're so amazing. They're so human too, which is really cool. Okay, so let's say I'm a young driver coming out of karting, and I'm going through Road to Indy program. What, or for any, young drivers or for people, just can you explain like the progression that it takes? Where would I start? And then also, where would I end up? Is it not just IndyCar, right? The graduates from Road to Indy go on to other series as well, right?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting you say that. So a karting driver comes in and says, of course, any young karter says, I want to be an IndyCar driver or Formula One, right? That's normally the first thing they'll say. I don't care what happens, right? A couple of them will say, I want to run, I run IMSA, but most drivers are thinking IndyCar or Formula One. So you come out of karting, and normally we would say go to the Lucas Oil School of Racing, right? Because you got to come out of a kart, get into a car, do this big school, get the license, do the race. They have a racing series as well. From there, you can, depending how you do, you can maybe go to F1600, or if you do really well, you come right into USF 2000. There's a scholarship with the Lucas Oil School of Racing Formula Car Series for $75,000 that you take and come to USF 2000. Prescott Campbell did it. Reese Gold did it before him. And this past year, Eli Navarro, he's going to be driving with D-Force Racing. So then you get into that level, right? You get into USF 2000. That's really the transition. And then, of course, USF 2000, couple of years there, unless you win the scholarship, the championship, and move up. But one of the things you said, your drivers will continue to go up. And it's the way that the program's designed is kind of like a pyramid. You normally have, 24 to 28 drivers at USF 2000, maybe a little less. I think we'll probably have 16 or 18 drivers in Indy Pro this year. And at its best, 18 Indy Lights. We have 12 confirmed right now. Could get as high as 14 or 15, but that program's growing. So it always gets a bit smaller. So as you go up the ranks, as you mentioned this, everybody's trying to go to the next level. They're trying to get to Indy Lights, but it gets pretty expensive. It's $1 million to run Indy Lights. And then, of course, you got to find the money to get up to for your first year of IndyCar. That's the beauty. If we've developed and put a driver and graduated the money in Indy Lights into IndyCar, we've done our job, right? That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're trying to do. But how many drivers have we seen that maybe just couldn't quite come up with the money to get to IndyCar, and they've gone to IMSA and been absolute superstars? And I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in. We are the Road to Indy, but to be real, if a driver comes out of Indy Pro and can't get to Indy Lights and they go to sports cars, we see them winning all the time. Whether it was Pato O'Ward went over and won in the prototype challenge. Rasmus Lint did the same thing. Robert McGinnis has gone over. Aaron Telitz is a perfect example as well. Now, one of the factory drivers, official drivers for Vassar Sullivan. The talent, the skills we develop, and the talent we develop, these drivers can really go anywhere and be stars.
That's awesome. And it's great too, because not just everybody. Most people, most of the, obviously the young drivers that I speak to, obviously when you do IndyCar or F1, is it possible to go into F1 as well from the Road to Indy?
Well,
I know Pato O'Ward got close, but
that's not something that we've done yet. But you're right, Pato, of course, that was an option, right? Pato went from Indy Lights to the Super Formula over Japan, and Red Bull had thought about bringing him to Formula One, but the only issue at that point was our numbers were low in Indy Lights. It was that dip of Indy Lights numbers. We're back, like we're going to have 50% more drivers than 2019 this year, at least from 8 up to 12. He didn't have enough super license points because of Indy Lights not having enough cars. But there's a lot of talk now about potentially some of these young American talented drivers, like a Colton Herta or potentially another driver moving from IndyCar to Formula One. I personally don't see it happening. I think it's a real long shot just because of the way things are over in Europe now. There's a lot of well-funded drivers and then factory teams that I think it would be a long shot for an American to go over. And again, I would tell you this, I don't think many Americans are going to go over unless they get one of the top tier rides. There's no sense in going over and running for a mid-pack team if you're able to run for championships here. At least that's my opinion. Maybe those drivers have that dream of Formula One, but otherwise I can't see it happening.
No, that's a good point. And, that actually goes right into my next point that I want to bring up. So, yeah, you talked about the American drivers going over and racing in the European series or for Formula One. It's not as big. But what is big is I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of international drivers who always tell me one thing, that especially if you're a young driver, there are so many racing opportunities here in America, hence the Road to Indy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Hence the Road to Indy program. So we have talked a little bit about scholarship here. You mentioned the scholarships, which is what the young drivers I have a top two in the, in the others, in the younger series. What other incentives are there? Because for international drivers, not just for international drivers, for American drivers as well. But what are the incentives for any young driver trying to race in America?
Well, I think that just comes down to the scholarship. Number one,
Mhm.
first and foremost, whether you're running in F4 or F3 or any of the other series, the Formula Regional European Series over there, Open, the Euro, I always say Euro Formula Open Series. Like I always get that one wrong. The different programs there. The dream over there of every F4 driver is always Formula One. If you're a European guy, right? And it takes the opportunity for them to get to a point where, and they say, well, you know what, maybe F1's not in my cards for me. I'm not part of a manufacturer academy, whatever it may be. I don't have enough family money to be able to get up there. They can pivot and then look over to here, because the beauty about the Road to Indy is not just the scholarships. That's one thing, but the base foundation is the top level equipment that we have. The Tatis chassis we have are amazing, all the way up through the Dallara, of course, and Indy Lights. One of the things we don't talk a lot about, but is absolutely huge, is we run IndyCar weekends. So we have access to the AMR safety team. So when you're coming to run with the Road to Indy, it's not your local track ambulance or an EMT. You're literally, if you have an incident, the same guys that are there for the IndyCar team are there for you as well. And they get to know our drivers and they know it. So I love that level of safety. It's an extra thing I know the families and the parents really love. But really, any European driver, you come over here, great teams, great racetracks, awesome fans, just a great atmosphere, but it's the scholarship. The bottom line is that nowhere else in the world, if you win a championship, are you going to win the kind of money you're going to win here?
Perfect. I love it. That's awesome. That's exactly, yeah, there you go. The incentives here are amazing. Thank you for
Indeed.
explaining that. A lot of people don't realize that there is, that's why the racing is so good here, is because of the scholarship, the scholarship money. So it's good to hear that. Okay, let's move into the 2021 season real quick. And the Road to Indy, obviously, we're going to talk about that. Tell me about who are your top three picks for Indy Lights? And then I want to
Wow.
know, and I won't, and
You're going
yeah,
to put me on the spot.
I did.
Wow.
Sorry.
All right.
I want to. Sorry, I want to. I had to do it.
I'll tell you, the crazy thing about this year is, because we had the hiatus last year, we've got more talent coming in than we would have had, right? You think about
Yeah.
last year, Kyle Kirkwood won USF 2000, 3 years ago now. Then he won Indy Pro 2000. So as he comes in with a scholarship with Andretti Autosport, you got to say he's definitely going to be one of the contenders, right? He's won so many races on the Road to Indy in just the 2 years he ran. So he's got to be in the hunt. You look at it, you always got to look at everybody, I think, at Andretti, right? Because they've had such a good team, and they have had a good success over the last number of years with Pato and Colton, and Oliver Askew, of course. So you got Robert McGinnis, who's coming back again for another year, right? So Robert's, and he was able to win in 19, so he's got a pedigree coming in. Daniel Frost and Devlin DiFrancesco both be making their debuts as well this year, coming in from after winning races, of course, last year in Indy Pro 2000. I think one of the guys that has to be looked at as a championship contender signed recently with Juncos Racing, and that's Toby Sowery. Toby from England, he was able to win in 2019. And he's a veteran driver, tons of experience, really composed, and so he's not going to be shaken. And of course, Juncos Racing, as we know, they won a couple of championships in the last couple of years with Spencer Pigot and Kyle Kaiser, and then of course 6 races in 2019 with Arena. So they're going to give him a great card to be able to win there. Stingray Rob's the rookie coming in, having won the Indy Pro 2000 category last year, so he could be in the fight. So if you give me 3, I would say Kirkwood and Sowery, and then probably Linus Lundqvist. I think he's a bit of a dark horse to a certain extent. He and David Malukas, I think, from HMD Motorsports. Linus dominated the action last year in the Formula Regional America Series, right? So
Right.
I think he's going to be a dark horse because the competition over there was good, but not amazing. Let's see what he does against, what could be an amazing field of Indy Lights drivers.
No, totally true. And I had an opportunity to interview him at COTA when they did their series finale. So yeah, I was really impressed with him. He won like almost all of the races.
Yeah, I think he only lost 1 race or 2 races max.
Yeah,
right?
like 1 or 2. Yeah. He dominated that season. So yeah, no, I'm glad you said Linus because he's on my radar too. So
He should be.
okay, awesome. He's definitely, we'll see. Yeah, we're gonna see what happens, right? So Are there any other standout breakout drivers for any of the lower ones for the USF 2000 or the Indy Pro that you worth mentioning that you think?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Indy Pro 2000 is we're getting a bunch of different drivers coming in that are kind of
Mhm.
surprising us. You look at the guys from last year that I think we expect will be good. Braden Ease, of course, coming back after the big wreck he had at Indianapolis. He's with Exclusive Autosport again. You got to be your primary contender for the championship, having won USF 2000 back in 19. Look at maybe Hunter McElroy from Paps Racing. He was able to win at the end of the season as well at St. Petersburg, and he's a super talented driver, second in USF 2000 behind Eves that year. So those are two guys to watch out for. Enzo Fittipaldi just signed. As we know, he's going to be running with RP Motorsport USA with a little bit of help in the background from Andretti. He's a dark horse, and I think kind of an unknown in terms of knowing all the tracks that we run on here. That'll be tough for him. As I said, we talked about earlier, right? A guy like Braden Eves and Hunter McElroy, they've run all the
Mhm.
tracks already in USF 2000, so they have some knowledge of the facilities. Hunter Yaney, I think will be interesting because he won the F4 championship last year, but this is a big step up for him. He didn't go to USF 2000, right to Indy Pro with a new team with Velocity. To me, that's some of the stuff I find really interesting. That there's going to be some new drivers and new teams coming in that could potentially make it really, really interesting.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so it's good to know because we have the inside. There you go. We have the inside
That's it.
inside look there. That's it. There you go. Okay, and I'm gonna just want to talk about one thing, one last thing. So in racing, there's a lot of talk about equality, being inclusive. We have all these initiatives kind of going on. But we have, well, you guys have in Road to Indy, you have the Race for Equality and Change Initiative, right? And can you tell us a little bit about that and what's so great about it? Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, because of what I do with karting and everything I do,
Hmm.
I find it really interesting because I say this a lot. The beauty about motorsports, and this is where it kind of does open it up to both men and women, is the simple fact that the cart or a car has no idea who's driving it. Right? It's not about strength. It's not about it's you have to have a certain amount of strength, but it's not about size or height or bulk, whatever it may be. It's everybody can get to the physical level you need to drive a machine, and all it knows about is input, which I love about that. So it doesn't matter who you are, male or female, you can drive
Hmm.
as long as you have the skills and ability. It's more about money to a certain extent, right? To be real, you
Right.
look back at a lot of the karting right now. It's about money and about just sheer numbers. Because if you look at karting, if we have let's just say there's 1,000 kids that can come up, and we potentially have 50 girls. It's 5%. It's that. So that's why. So to get a girl all the way to racing, you have to have a lot of girls to draw from to have the one with the talent, with the funding primarily to get up here, because we've seen there's a lot of talented girls in karting right now that may just not have the funding to be able to get up to where we are. That's the biggest issue, right? But of course,
Right.
the diversity angle, the program that Roger Penske brought down, which is such a tremendous deal, is actually starting in USF 2000 with Force Indy, which is amazing, right? Rod
Right.
Reed is running that program. There's going to be I think the whole team is going to be African Americans, and they've pulled from other organizations, other series that Rod runs a karting program. He's brought guys into that. I think it's going to be amazing. And they just recently announced their driver Miles Rowe, who is a talented young driver coming up through the karting ranks. They've been doing a lot of testing. He did the Lucas Oil School that I talked about. It's going to be a really fun program to watch, and watching Miles already on some of the social media, the team's having a great time. They look like they already have a great dynamic. They had a chance to work with John Boslog, who has worked for Penske for a lot of time. So they're going to have all the procedures and everything in place from top down from Penske to be able to come out of the gate strong. It's a really interesting program for us, because I think one of the things that the Road to Indy has done, and we've talked about European drivers, right, and bringing people over,
Right.
it's always so international. Whether it's Japan or Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, drivers from France, England, New Zealand, Australia, we always seem to have this huge international field. And now now we'll have some African Americans as well. We've had Asian drivers. We've had drivers from different ethnicities that I think makes it such a beautiful thing. And to get an opportunity to have Miles in the field as one of our African American drivers, we could have a couple more that could be coming up as well. There's one coming. I can't say anything about it, but there's another potential African American driver that's going to get announced to a team as well. So that's not done yet, but it's exciting, right? And then we want more
That's
women. We want more
exciting.
women drivers. We love seeing women racing. Saber Cook was one of the drivers we had for many years. Of course, Pippa Mann ran in the Indy Lights program as well. And there are, as I said, from my time in karting and what I do in the kart racing world, there are some extremely talented young female drivers that I really hope get a chance to come up, because there are some that are at the very top of the ranks right now that just need the funding and the support to get there.
What and that and you just mentioned the funding and support. Why do you think it's so hard for female drivers to get that funding and
Well,
support?
I don't even know that, at least at this level, when we're talking about USF
Hmm.
2000, it's not that they're trying to get
Right.
the support, to be real, because there's not one
Big
USF
support.
2000 driver that has a big sponsor, right? It's all the
Right.
parents just seem to have money. They may have been able to put some backing together. It's more family money. So again, like I said,
Okay.
if you go to a kart race and you have 90 young men with family money to race karting, because it costs a lot of money to race top level karting, $100,000, $150,000 a year sometimes, or more, depending on how much you race and test. But you have 90 men and 10 women. So of those 100 drivers, let's say you hope that 10% of those drivers have enough money to go to USF 2000, which, let's be real, costs $350,000 a year to run USF 2000. So let's just say
Okay.
that 10% of each group. So that's
Hmm.
10 drivers in the male side, 10% of 10. That means one female driver may have an opportunity to have that money. And that's really what's happened. I've been doing this for 25 years. I I have not yet seen one female driver come through with enough money to go to IndyCar. They just don't. It just we haven't had that young lady that has all that backing needed to go all the way to Indy
Hmm.
Lights. It hasn't happened.
It happened. Well, hopefully,
And that's sad,
hopefully
right?
that can
Because
change.
that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
It's just the way things shake down. I would love to see some
Right.
corporations step up and say this. I'll give you one name right now. A tremendous young girl. Her name's Hannah Greenmeyer, out of
Hmm.
Colorado. She is one of the best drivers, single speed karters in the country right now. Wins races on the top level, and the family has a bit of money. They're looking to go to cars, but I don't think they have what it takes to go all the way to Indy Lights. But if a company got behind her, she could easily be an Indy car in 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, when you explain it like that, it makes sense, and it is frustrating because obviously the talent is there, and when
Yes,
it always comes down to money, doesn't it?
yeah.
It always does, no matter what.
It's part of our sport. It's
It
the
is.
realistic part of our sport, to be honest.
It is.
Yeah,
Well, I hope. Well, I hope there are some companies that can step up because it's such a great opportunity to get behind that, and
agreed. Yeah,
uh, gosh, it really, yeah. Well, hopefully, well, I also am doing another YouTube series where I focus on women and girls in motorsports. So maybe I can give them some more coverage too and
I
help
would
as
love that.
much as I
I'll help you out.
can.
I'll give you some
No, thank
contacts for the
you.
young ladies to talk to in karting. It would be great for you.
Please, I would love that. I would love that. Anything to help them out because
Agreed.
we all need it and it needs to be out there. So, okay, well, awesome. I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about with Road to Indy? Did we cover everything?
I think we did. Again, if people are watching this just to kind of get a feel
Mhm.
for it, that's the idea, right?
Right.
All I would ever say is the great thing about racing now and any kind of sport, but of course motorsports. It's so easy to be able to watch what we do, right? It's not you watch IndyCar race, but if you download the Road to Indy TV app to your phone, every race we have is on there. Our cameras aren't always moving because in the morning the cameramen aren't there, so it's a lockdown camera. But yeah, we have all of our events are on the same thing. It's on our website. It's on the Road to Indy TV app as well. So you can watch all our coverage on everything that we do. There's great ways to stay up on it. Follow us on social media, USF 2000, Indy Pro, and Indy Lights, and on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. You get a chance to kind of connect with everybody. And the one thing I would say to anybody who's a racing fan, if you love IndyCar, think about what it would have been like if you would have connected with a Scott Dixon or Elio Castroneves or James Hinchcliffe or Will Power when they were younger. Because you get to follow
Right.
them all the way up through the ranks, and literally you could develop friendships with them when they're younger because they have no fans. So it's a
No,
right,
it's
it's a
so
great
true.
opportunity to talk to them now. And then when they're not going to walk by you in an IndyCar, they're going to stop and give you a high five because they've known you for 5 years.
That's that's how I got lucky with Renus.
That's it.
And then Lee and I told Linus Ludacris when I interviewed him. I said, okay, so here we are at FR, Americans. So I'm here with you now. And at that time, it wasn't sure that he was going to go to India Lights. So
Yep.
I said, okay, hopefully you get into Indy Lights and I interview for you when you're at Indy Lights, and then I said, and then when you go into IndyCar, you better not ignore me.
That's it, right?
Yes, you
That's
better
it.
remember me.
That's
You
funny.
better remember me. I know. So
Well,
anyway, but
I
yeah,
talked to all the guys. We have this thing with so many of the drivers that are working their way up the ranks. I said, what we're waiting for is the fact that I interviewed you when you were a cadet driver in karting, because I announced cadet karting. I want to interview you in your cadet, and then one day I want to interview you in victory lane at the Indianapolis 500. And hopefully that's
that,
going to happen one day. That I'll have that connection. The driver and I will have that connection. I've talked to James Hinchcliffe about it, Pato, Oliver, all the guys that I covered on the way up through the ranks. We want to have that connection where it was when you were 8 years old and when you've won the greatest race in the world.
absolutely right. Imagine being there when they win like the Indy 500, and you're like, ah, you
I'll
know.
try not to cry is what I'll do.
I would totally
I'll
cry.
be so choked up.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I
Nuts.
love it. That's amazing. Awesome. Okay. Rob, you also have some really cool things too. You want to go ahead and plug your social media and you do some cool stuff on YouTube as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff. We're into YouTube big time now, of course, with what I do for the Road to Indy. One as the announcer, I do what's called the Road to Indy Insider. So I do that. It's just on my Rob Howden YouTube channel. I have that on there. RTI_insider on Twitter and Road to Indy Insider on Facebook. You can follow me as well, just at Rob Howden. On Instagram, I'm at Rob Howden Racing. But we do a lot of stuff with e-karting news as well. We have e-karting news on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, and we have, of course, the website itself, ekartingnews.com. So if you want to follow guys from the very beginning, you start on ekarting news, then they go to the Road to Indy, then it's IndyCar.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect. So then there you go. Especially, I really, I have to tell you something funny. I'm not used. This was the first year that I did like the FR Americas and F4. So I would go up to I was like, okay, where's the media? Where's the media person for Linus? And they're like, just go talk to him.
Just go talk to him.
I'm like, okay. So then I go up in there and I'm like, Linus? He's like, yeah, hi. And I was like, oh, can I do an interview with you? Can we do it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, gee, can you give me your PR person's name? You're looking at him.
It's just me.
And he gives me his WhatsApp number, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
we're in.
WhatsApping. I know.
That's
it's
awesome.
So funny. It's so funny. But anyway, that just reminded me of that. Okay.
I
So
love
I feel like I talked to you forever about these fun stories, Rob. So
I love it.
I know, I love it too. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I know you're so busy, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you for explaining all of Road to Indy, and I will do my best too to be promoting this, and also we'll be in touch with the female drivers too.
For sure,
well.
yeah. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.
Bye.